Thank you. I shall start again. Good morning and welcome to the Committee of Adjustment hearings for Rural Panel 3. Thank you. We are a City of Ottawa quasi-judicial tribunal that holds public hearings to consider planning act applications, including minor variances to the zoning requirements and consent to sever land. Our hearings are now in person at Ben Franklin Place, 101 Centrepoint Drive. We also enable remote participation by video conferencing for our registered speakers. We are live streaming on YouTube and the video will be archived and available for future viewing by the public. My name is Bill Hunter. I'll be chairing today's hearings and you can address me by my name or as chair. With me are my fellow panel members, Martin Vervoet on my far left, Terry Otto on my near left. Beth Henderson is on video today and Jocelyn Chander is on my right. The procedure for the hearings will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on screen from time to time are the applications we'll hear today. For the sake of efficiency, I may deal with agenda items in a different order. Panel members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or in opposition to each of the applications. Today, we'll hear any oral submissions relating to the applications. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property in question before the hearing. They also had to confirm in writing that they did so, or they'll need to swear or affirm an oath today that they've fulfilled the sign posting requirements. Otherwise, you may have to adjourn or postpone the hearing. The panel may ask for a brief presentation of an application, followed by questions for the applicant and city planning staff. We will then hear from members of the public who have registered to speak, and we may also have questions for them. Finally, the applicant, who has the burden of proof, will have an opportunity to make final comments in reply. Please address your comments to me as the chair, starting with your name and spelling, if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. All presentations are limited to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at my discretion. At the end of the hearing, the panel may either make an oral decision or we may reserve our decision, which means it won't be delivered today. In either case, and within 10 days, the Committee of Adjustment will send the official written decision and reasons for it to all the parties, participants, and anyone else who has requested a copy. Does anyone have any questions about the procedure to be followed today? There being none, are there any declarations of interest? Yes, Ms. Chandler.
Two declarations of interest for panel 1 being minor variance A00041, that's 171 Armstrong. Also minor variance A00031, that's at 6 Oak. And for this panel 3, minor variance A00111 at 3390 Borrisokane Road. And the OLT decision 21001475 request for change of condition at 7665 Bleeks Road.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations of interest, panel members? No. There being none, are there any minutes of previous meetings to confirm?
No minutes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Withdrawal or adjournment requests. We'll move to that. And I understand that we have an adjournment request for one of the York Road properties, York Corners Road. And is there somebody here to speak to that? Because just to be clear, what I'd like to do is refer to the both York Roads, York Corners items, even though one is unopposed, quote unquote, and the other has asked for an adjournment. Is there somebody here to speak to that? Anybody online? Yes, there is. Yes,
Good morning.
Please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jeff Shipman. I'm agent for the applicant on this file.
Okay. So would you like to speak to the one that you're asking for an adjournment, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The subject application was for a surplus farm dwelling severance and an accompanying creation of a right-of-way in favor of the adjacent property. In in respect to the conditions proposed and the status of the building, the applicants require considerable time to bring the building up to snuff or to deal with it, or perhaps even indeed to tear it down and build a new dwelling there. So we'd like to adjourn the primary application, I believe is 00318. That's for the surplus farm dwelling. I would like to adjourn that sine die but proceed with the creation of the right-of-way in favor of the adjacent property, please.
Okay, are there any comments from planning department on the items?
Thank you, Chair. I believe we would be okay with proceeding the way that Mr. Shipman has outlined.
Okay. Panel members, any questions? Mr. Vervoort, do you have questions? No? Mr. Chairman, no questions? Okay. So we all agree then that the York Center Road will be adjourned as requested, and the other one will be 397373, yes, will be granted. Is that agreed?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the agenda item number 6, it's not being completely adjourned because we need that reciprocal right of way. So I suggest we just sort of deal with 5 and 6 together when we get to it.
Well, that's what I thought. I was dealing with 5 and 6. I wanted questions.
Yeah.
About 5 and 6.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that it's not being completely adjourned because that reciprocal right of way request is still part of item number 6.
So, Mr. Vervoort, which item are you saying is not completely adjourned? Is that the item where an adjournment is requested?
Yes, because the reciprocal right of way portion of that application is still being requested by the applicant.
So
He's no longer requesting the severance, just the reciprocal right of way is my understanding.
Yeah.
But Mr. Shipman can confirm.
okay,
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair, I believe B00318 is the surplus farms dwelling application. We're requesting adjournment on that one. And the accompanying number 4053B York's Corners Road is B00319, which is the right-of-way request to create a right-of-way in favor of the adjacent property. We would like to proceed with that portion of the 4053 York's Corners Road applications.
all right, Mr. Vervoort, does that meet? Okay. Okay, so let's go and while we're at this now, is everybody agreeable just to proceeding with this item now? Panel members? Okay. You're okay? Okay. Okay, Mr. Shipman, would you like to speak to that item then, please?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'll deal with the 3973 York's Corner Road applications first. B00316 and B00317. This is a fairly straightforward surplus farm dwelling application together with a right-of-way application to create a right-of-way in favor of the adjacent property, part of this reciprocal right-of-ways between the two adjacent properties. Reading the planner's report, I don't see any issues, and we're prepared to proceed with the conditions as outlined.
Okay. Any questions, panel members, with respect to that? Planning, any comments? No, there being none? Okay. Can we deal with the next York Corners matter then? I believe that's 319.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes. So this is simply the creation of a right-of-way across a portion of 4053 York's Corners Road to service 3973. part again of this reciprocal right-of-way creation between the two properties which will enable them to widen the access for this property and for the adjacent property. So we have really, again, a total of 3 applications we're dealing with. One to create the surplus farm dwelling on 3973, one to create a right-of-way across a portion of 3973 in favor of 4053, and this second application at 4053 to create a right-of-way across 4053 in favor of 3973.
Any questions, panel? Mr. Vervoort?
Just for planning, I'm assuming all the other conditions don't need to be applied, then it would just be the standard conditions that are applied to a right-of-way for agenda item number 6 at 4053B York's Corners Road. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can make that change then?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chair, sorry to interject. I would just like to ensure in the conditions mentioned in respect to the road widening condition in respect to 4053, we would request that a road wide condition there is not included for 4053. After all, it's only the creation of a right of way. There's no development associated with it. And the cost of survey relative to 4053 for road widening would be prohibitive in the context of simple creation of a right of way.
Okay, panel members, are we agreeable to that? Yes, Mr. Chadwick.
I'm just going to reiterate what I understand that we're at, possibly partially for staff clarification and for my own. We are looking at an approval for B00316 and 00317 with all the listed conditions. We have accepted an adjournment for 00318, which is associated with the listed conditions. And we are looking at an approval for B00319 with what conditions? So that question.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. As I view it, only condition number 9 on the 4053 York's Corners Road would be applicable.
Planning staff? I just want clarity on what condition, if any, are being applied to B00319, and that's the right of way on 4053B Yorkers Corners Road.
Yes, so I believe the survey would be the main thing that we would want applied for this one to show the right of way that's being created.
Okay, that's consistent with Mr. Shipman's statement, so I'm good.
Any other questions or comments, panel members? No? Okay. Mr. Shipman, do you have anything you wish to add?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So if we deal with item number 6, that's 4035B York's Corners Road, then do we agree that that's to be adjourned sine die? Members of the panel? Adjourned sine die? And 3973 York's Corners or 20, that's items 316 and 317. Do we agree that that be granted, panel members?
Agreed.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Shipman. Sorry.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, I believe we're also contemplating a vote on B319, the right of way for item 6.
Well, it's 319, is that not going to be adjourned?
I believe B318 for the lot creation is proposed to be adjourned sine die, or has been, leaving B319 just for the right of way, subject to a vote by the panel.
So that be approved then? I think that's, is that approved? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. 319 then is approved. The panel approves it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have some items that are unopposed. And I'd like to deal with those if I could. Item number 1 is 1342 Corkery Road.
Hello,
Hello, could I have your name, please?
my name is Karen Proud. I'm the homeowner at 1342 Corkery Road. Here again.
Well, I think it's unopposed. Would you have any comments?
No, my only comment is it's a bit frustrating that I had to come here twice on the same project with an existing building. I mean, the city staff have been wonderful and very helpful. But it seems that this piece got missed, requiring me to come back again.
Panel members, any comments, questions? Anybody else have any comments or questions? Can we grant it? Granted? Granted. Thank you very much. I hope you don't have to come back again.
I hope I never see you again.
Well, you might, who knows? Okay, item number 2 is 3390. I think we'll skip over that one. We'll come back to that. Item number 3 is 7925 Parkway Road. Anybody here to speak to that? I believe it's unopposed. Any questions, panel members, or comments? Any questions or comments from anybody in the room? Can we grant that then? Granted. Thank you. And we've. Okay. We'll deal then with items that are not unopposed with item number 4, 1929 8th Line Road. And was there a signed declaration there?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it was received very recently.
Okay, so you have that, he doesn't have to take the oath then.
That's correct. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Can I have your name, please?
My name is Ryan Polton. I'm with Novatech.
Okay, and would you like to speak to this matter, Mr. Polk?
I would. So in terms of, I've prepared a presentation
Okay,
and it's mainly going to address the staff report just because I understand the city has some concerns. And so, okay, so my name is Ryan Polton. I'm a planner at Novatech, and Novatech acted as the agent on behalf of the owners to prepare and file the consent and minor variance applications being heard this morning for 1929 8th Line Road. Next slide, please. So this is my presentation is just going to do a quick overview of the property, describe the existing conditions, describe the proposed severances, provide a rationale, describe the requested minor variance, provide a rationale, and then conclude. We're also going to talk about correspondence we have with the city in terms of the steps taken to revise these applications because they were previously adjourned in February. And just our correspondence with city staff to explain where we're at today and why we're like confused by the staff report having concerns. So this slide here is an air photo of the property. You can see it's in the rural area of Ottawa. It's north of the village of Metcalfe and to the east of the village of Freely. Next slide, please. So this is a zoomed in air photo. So the subject property is a corner lot with frontage along 8th Line Road and Forest Green Crescent. There's a rural estate lot subdivision to the south. There's actually the Metcalfe Golf Course to the west. And then to the north and east, there are rural lands. On the property today, there's an existing dwelling. There's an unoccupied livestock facility, and there's accessory buildings. The property is designated rural countryside in the official plan. Next slide, please. So this is a zoning map of the property. So most of the property is zoned RU, which is rural countryside. You'll note that there is a corridor going through the property zoned Parks and Open Space subzone O. That's a natural gas pipeline. There is an easement in favor of TransCanada Pipelines Limited over that corridor. We coordinated with TransCanada Pipelines Limited in preparing and filing these applications. Next slide, please. So this is our consent sketch 1, and it's this application proposes to sever a 2.15 hectare parcel with 123 meters of frontage along 8th Line Road. This western severed parcel will accommodate the existing dwelling, unoccupied livestock facility, and accessory buildings on the property. Next slide, please. So this is our consent application 2. And so this proposes to sever a 1.12 hectare parcel with 75 meters of frontage along Forest Green Crescent. So this eastern severed parcel will be vacant. A minor variance application has been filed in support of this severance to permit a reduced minimum distance separation, or MDS setback. The retained parcel will be vacant. So these 2 severance sketches we just talked about, we provided these consent sketches to the city staff on April 4th, and we requested they provide us with their comments or concerns on the revised severances. In their response on April 12th, they stated that the revised lot configuration was an improvement over the previous proposal and requested a revised rationale in support of the remaining minor variance. So originally we had 2 minor variances requested. In revising the severances, we eliminated both of those minor variances, but it created a need for another minor variance for reduced MDS setback. So they were simply asking for an updated rationale for the minor variance, which I will speak to shortly. In terms of these consent applications, though, as per our revised cover letter dated May 1st, the consent applications are consistent with the policies of the PPS, and we've provided a response to the criteria under the Planning Act in support of this, the consent applications. Next slide, please. So this is an excerpt from the EIS. I was going to go into more detail about this, but what this figure shows is a 0.5 acre recommended building areas on the vacant, severed, and retained parcels as a recommendation in the environmental impact study. That's a note to help explain the requested minor variance and the rationale. Next slide, please. So this is our minor variance sketch. So it's requested to permit a reduced MDS setback of 68 meters, whereas the zoning bylaw requires an MDS setback of 138 meters between the existing livestock facility and a 0.5 hectare building area on the vacant severed parcel. Next slide, please. This is my second last slide, but there's a lot of information on this. So this is an MDS figure we prepared. So this figure shows the calculated MDS setback, which is the dashed white line, the proposed lot fabric in purple, the proposed 68 meter MDS setback to the 0.5 hectare building area, which is the yellow box. That's the requirement from the provincial guidelines. That's how the setback's measured. And a 103 meter MDS setback to a 0.5 acre recommended building area, which is the orange box, which I referenced previously. That's the recommendations of the EIS. Please note there's no relief required for the retained vacant parcel. So we provided this figure to city staff with our revised consent sketches as part of our rationale. We then rewrote and provided a rationale in support of the minor variance to city staff on April 17th. On April 26th, city staff responded confirming the reduction to MDS on this property would be supportable based on the provided rationale. You are welcome to reapply at your convenience. So, and I've got a copy of that correspondence here. So based on the city's April 17th email, we revised the application, updated the cover letter, and resubmitted it for recirculation. So we forwarded city staff these revised severances plus this minor variance figure. They had no comments other than it was an improvement over the original application. We provided a rationale for the minor variance, which they then accepted. So we're very puzzled by why the staff report has some concerns with this application. And that's why we felt we needed to explain the steps we've taken in this presentation today. In terms of the minor variance rationale, as detailed in our cover letter, the requested variance meets the 4 tests under the Planning Act. So just in conclusion, next slide, please. So the proposed severances don't require a plan of subdivision for the orderly development of land. They have regard for the criteria outlined in subsection 5124 of the Planning Act. The consent applications are consistent with the policies of the PPS. The proposed minor variance maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw. The requested variance is considered desirable for the use of the land and is minor in nature. So the consent applications and proposed minor variance represent good land use planning. Thank you.
Could I hear from planning as to what the comments are, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So planning staff's concerns with this one just stemmed from the reduction of the MDS setback. Despite the fact that we don't really have concerns with this one, it is a bit of a reduction from the original calculated setback. So we just wanted to flag that. That was all.
Okay, no other planning doesn't have any other concern?
No, that's correct.
Okay, panel members, any questions?
Sorry, just through the chair. I'm very confused by that statement because in the staff report, it says staff are satisfied that the requested minor variance meets the 4 tests. So I don't know how you can be concerned with the reduced MDS setback. That is the minor variance requested.
Okay.
You've said it meets the 4 tests. So I'm just explaining the source of my confusion. Thank you.
If say that, you'll certainly have an opportunity at the appropriate time.
Okay.
Panel members, Chandler, did you have some questions or concerns? Oh, Beth, Miss Henderson. Panel member Henderson.
Thank you. I do have a question for the agent, and I guess I'm just curious why the dimension of 68 meters was used as opposed to the 103 meters when the EIS identified that buffer is required to be there.
Happy to explain for sure. So that's actually part of our rationale in support of the minor variances. So we calculated the MDS setback as 138 meters. The way the provincial guidelines require us to measure the setback is to a 0.5 hectare building area on the severed lot. So it's a larger area. It was that yellow rectangle on the severed lot. So that's the relief that's required that we're requesting today through the minor variance application. The 103 meter setback to that orange box is to a 0.5 acre proposed building area. And that is the recommendation of the environmental impact study. And that's a much smaller area. And we're just demonstrating that future development. So the recommendations of the EIS will be registered on title through development agreement. And it's recommending a building area that's smaller than the way we measure the MDS setback. And so the effective setback of a future house on that property will be 103 meters at least, and not the requested relief of 68 meters. So I'm hoping that explained the difference in terms of the numbers.
Okay, yes, it does. I guess my only concern is, so you identified that EIS is going to be registered on title? Is that
Yes,
correct?
that is one of the conditions, yes.
Right, yeah. And then in the development agreement, I guess I'm just somewhat concerned, and I don't know if there's, I don't want to be overly conservative, but if the EIS identifies that area to be, let's say, a no-touch zone, in the development agreement with the city, is there also a way to ensure that let's call it buffer zone, so the actual dimension that we're truly approving is 103 meters, as opposed to the property line being 68 meters. Does anybody understand that?
I believe I do, yes. So you're asking how will the development agreement limit the location of the building? to that 103-meter box to that 0.5
Correct.
acre building area. So my understanding is the recommendations of the environmental impact study will be included in a report that gets registered on title. And so in registering those recommendations on title, it gives notice to any future owner of the restrictions on the land. Now, at the end of the day, it's up to the landowners in the city to review development applications and to make sure it meets agreements. So it's not upheld in terms of the zoning bylaw, and the relief that we're requesting is to the 68 meters, because that's how the MDS is measured in the provincial guidelines. But it would be up to the future landowner and the city reviewing building permit applications and reviewing agreements on title to make sure that they're developing the property consistent with the recommendations of the environmental impact study.
Any further questions? Mr. Otto?
Yes, I think this is it's either a question for planning or for the applicant. It appears to me through some of these diagrams that there is a space between Forest Green Road or Forest Green Crescent and the properties, and want to make sure that these do front on Forest Green, that there isn't a space in between. We don't want to create lots without frontage on a road. So is there an accurate survey to show that?
So we don't have a survey of the property, but Geo Ottawa does show the property is adjacent to the right-of-way of Forest Green Crescent. I believe I've got the frontages in the cover letter in terms of both the severed parcel and the retained vacant lands. They both have adequate frontage along Forest Green Crescent. I do get that the Forest Green Crescent itself is kind of winding, and it's quite a wide right of way. In some spaces, extra land was within the right of way, but it does have adequate frontage. You're not going to be able to see it, unfortunately, from my air photos. It's not zoomed in enough. It's quite a large property.
Any further questions, Mr. Otto?
Could we have a little bit more clarification from planning on that possibly, or?
Regarding the frontage issue, based on what the applicant has provided so far, it does appear that it has a little bit of frontage, meeting the requirements of the official plan, I believe it is, for 30 meters of frontage on a road. But if the applicant is able to provide a survey to show that, then we'll be able to confirm it.
Sorry, through the chair, I would note a survey will be required as a condition of approval of reference plan that will survey the severed lots as well as any required road widening if required. And so that will identify the frontage for the vacant severed lot we're creating. Yeah, so if that helps in terms of clarification. I would note that so we're for the vacant severed lot, we're proposing 75 meters of frontage along Forest Green Crescent, and the retained lands will have 56 meters of frontage along Forest Green Crescent.
Okay. Speaking in round numbers, the required MDS setback is 138 meters. You're looking for a reduction of 90 meters. So the relief you're looking for is 90 meters to bring it down to 68.45. As opposed to looking for a relief of 35 meters to bring it down to 103, which is the EIS prescribed building envelope. I guess I have one statement and one question. One is I'm of the opinion that we shouldn't be using an EIS building envelope to secure an MDS setback through a development agreement. There are different purposes and different tools. My question for the applicant is with respect to the test for the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. In your report on page 14, you speak to the purpose of the RU zone. And you underline statements in number 1 being to accommodate agriculture, residential lots. And don't note that number 2 is to recognize and permit this range of rural-based land uses, which often have a large lot or distance separation requirement, which I think is much more pertinent to the variance that you're looking for. And I would need to be further convinced that you actually do meet that test in terms of the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. When we look at to allow for larger separation distances to be met, given the relief that's being requested here.
So I'm happy to speak to that in terms of the purposes of the RU zone. So we did list 3 purposes of the zone. My practice is to list all of the uses permitted. Sorry. My practice is to list all of the purposes of the zone in our covering letters. So we've listed all 3 on page 14. You're correct. I've highlighted 1. And I've also highlighted, I didn't highlight 3, but I speak to 3. And I did not speak to the purpose of 2. So specifically for 2, so this is to recognize and permit this range of rural-based land uses, which often have large lot or distance separation requirements. So in terms of meeting that purpose of the zone specifically, it is accurate that we are requesting a reduced MDS setback as measured by the province. The EIS is part of the rationale in terms of where a building should be located on the severed lot, and the effect of that recommendations of the EIS are that the building would be located more than 100 meters from the vacant livestock facility. That setback is greater than the current setback between the dwelling on the property today and the vacant livestock facility. Originally, we actually were severing those 2, and city staff were opposed to that setback. And so the revised applications would provide an increased setback technically from compared to the original application if the recommendations of the EIS are implemented. The lot sizes have been increased as well. So the western severance size was increased to meet the lot area requirements for the vacant livestock facility. Originally requesting a variance for that use as well. So the revised application, sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Poulton, can I just ask you, we're looking at this application. I'm not concerned about what you've changed from the last one. I'm asking what on this application meets the purpose, the intent and purpose of number 2 in the zoning bylaw.
Okay, so we feel that the lot can be developed in respect on private services, so it can meet the lot area requirements for rural lot to be developed on a well and septic system. The effective setback, as per the EIS, is greater than the existing setback between the development on the property today. In the interest of caution, we calculated the vacant livestock facility MDS setback. So, sorry. So we feel that the requested variance meets that purpose 2 of the zone. We also feel that our requested variance meets purposes 1 and 3 of the zone. 1 is that it to accommodate country residential lots created by severance in the general rural area. So we're meeting that purpose of the zone. We're also meeting purpose 3 of the zone to regulate various types of development in manners that ensure compatibility with adjacent uses and respects the rural context. All the uses we're proposing are rural in nature and respects the rural context of the area and the rural character of the area. They can be serviced with private services in terms of separation distances between wells and septic systems. And we feel the EIS rationalizes and supports the request to reduce MDS setback, which is measured to 0.5 hectare building area, which is more onerous than the recommendations of the EIS, which is more strict in terms of directing where the house will be built on the property today. We'd also note that the livestock facility and the residential uses that are proposed, the future residential uses, are permitted uses in the RU zone and are within the character of the rural area. So we feel that our requested variance meets the 4 tests under Planning Act, including the request of the purpose, intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. We also have a city staff report that says they feel this variance meets the 4 tests under the Planning Act.
Subject to any other information or questions, I'd like to reserve on this one.
Okay, any other questions? Planning, please.
Sorry, I just have one point to note with reference to a development agreement for the EIS that was not included as a condition on this report. And I would like to request on behalf of planning that that be imposed.
Okay, what is the condition again? Sorry.
That the EIS is registered on title, the development agreements. I can provide that wording to staff to finalize.
Do you have any comments on what Mr. Polton indicated with regard to the setbacks?
No, I have no further comments.
Oh, okay. Mr. Vervoort.
I just want to clarify from planning. So it's planning's position that the 4 tests are met. I believe you indicated that earlier. Is that correct?
Yes. Based on discussion we had with the applicant previously, we believe that the 4 tests are met.
Thank you.
What if the requirements were changed rather than 68 to 103?
So the relief that's required is measured as per the provincial guidelines. So
Yes, I understand.
so we can't just change our requested relief. What we're rationalizing is should the recommendations of the environmental impact study be implemented, which it will be registered on title, but should they be implemented, the future dwelling will be located 103 meters away from the vacant livestock facility. And so while technically we need relief to the 68 meter, 68 meters setback to the 0.5 hectare building area as per the provincial guidelines, the effective setback of a future dwelling on the property would be 103 meters at least. It could be more than that. And we are taking into account like required setbacks, like front yard setbacks, and drawing our developable areas. So it's not right to the property line we've measured it. We've actually accounted for the front yard setback.
Could the setback be less than 103 meters?
It should not be less than 103 meters. Again, if the recommendations are implemented at the EIS, it'll be at least 103 meters. It could be more than that. There is a section of the buildable area as per the EIS that's actually outside of the required MDS setback. So I would expect a future dwelling to be within that area. That's the orange box as per the EIS.
Any comments? Ms. Chandler, yes.
I have a question to direct to staff in terms of how this decision would be rendered in terms of language, because on one hand, if you're asking for relief, that's like the reduction from the required MDS. On the other hand, or is it going to be written that you are providing a certain distance instead of the required distance? Because they're two different numbers we could work with. Because if you're asking for, and maybe I'm overthinking this, but if you're asking for relief from 138 required setback, they're asking for a 35 meter relief. Because it's very, and Mr. Polton has touched on this, the difference between what's going to come out of the ultimate building envelope, meaning they're going to provide a certain setback instead of the required setback, right? They're going to provide a certain distance instead of the required distance. or they are going to be relieved of a certain distance instead of the required distance. So I'm just trying to figure out which number we're supposed to work with. Are you reducing the, are you reducing the set with the language and the decision say the setback shall be reduced from 138 down to, I have to go and find the drawing again. 138 down to 68.45? Or will it be saying that a relief of 35 or 90 meters is being provided?
Thank you for the question through you, Mr. Chair. I would note that, I guess at the start in responding to that the specific variance refers to a setback to a 0.5 hectare building area and not specifically to a dwelling.
Okay.
There's also, there would, if these applications were theoretically approved, there are two decisions, the consent decision and the variance decision. There are no, as I understand it, perhaps the applicant can confirm specific building plans filed. But it's, the committee has the discretion to tie to a footprint as shown in a plan or a building area, and I'll let the applicant speak to that if they wish. Separately, the consent application would deal with any conditions with respect to requiring the registration of a development agreement on title that would implement recommendations of an EIS. So they would be handled separately, but I would just come back to the fact that the variance refers to a building area rather than a specific dwelling.
Okay, so if the committee approved this, looking at the EIS boundary as the limitation of a building envelope, we would still be saying to 68.45 meters for the MDS relief, the minor variance?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't want to speak for the applicant's submission, just highlighting that the variance is to the 0.5 hectare building envelope, whereas I think the applicant's submission is that the real setback may exceed that.
My understanding is that the variance requested is based on how you have to calculate the variance under the MDS guidelines the province creates, the province imposes. So we have to go with the 68 meters because you have to calculate the distance to a 0.5 hectare building envelope. Practically speaking, it's going to be 103 meters once the EIS agreement is registered on title, identifying the smaller building envelope. So I think that's all. So there's sort of two separate pieces, but effectively it's going to be at least 103 meters from the existing livestock structure once the house is built within that envelope, and probably more than 103 meters.
Yes, in implementing the recommendations of the EIS. Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Is that planning how you see it as well?
That is correct.
Any further questions? Comments? Do we deal with this or reserve it?
Reserve it.
Reserved? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Chandler has conflict of interest on the next item, 3390 Borrisokane Road. Is someone here to speak to that, please?
Good morning. My name is Mel Foster.
And would you like to speak to this matter? Mr. Foster?
Yes, we're building a farm building on this property to support our agricultural business.
I think it's unopposed, correct?
I believe so. Yeah.
Any comments? Anybody in the audience? Comments from panel members? Can we approve this? Okay, granted.
Quick question. What was the conflict of interest? I'm not aware of it.
I can't remember the exact nature of it, but Ms. Chandler works with somebody who had worked with in the past with this property. It's not a direct well, it's a conflict of interest, but it's not like she's in a really serious conflict of interest, in my opinion.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep,
Good. Thank you for coming.
no problem.
Okay, and finally, if we could deal with 7665.
We're done?
I'm sorry. Thank
Done?
you.
It's
It's approved. It's
Thank you.
granted.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just want.
7665 Bleeks Road. Good morning. If you could turn on the microphone and give us your name there, please, sir.
Press that?
Yeah, you're
Okay,
on.
there we go. Good morning to everybody. My name is Mr. Chair and to the members of the committee. My name is Tony Ferranda and I'm the property owner of 7665 Bleeks Road.
And would you like to speak to this matter, please?
Yes. Okay, well, I'll start off by saying some of the panel members may remember me from September of 2021 when this case was first heard at the Committee of Adjustment. It's almost 3 years later and I'm before the committee asking for a change of condition in order to complete these severances. The last major condition to fulfill was the Hydro G study, which has been provided to the city by Collard Associate Engineers on May 10th, 2024. The severances, I learned that last week, were denied based on a minor sodium exceedance. Important to note, it's not a health and safety exceedance, but rather an aesthetic issue related to potential taste. City staff say that the well I drilled is exceeding the maximum concentration considered reasonably treatable. Then this is from the 1996 Ministry of Environment D55 guidelines. The aesthetic objective for sodium is 200 milligrams per liter. And my well was at 216 milligrams per liter to 219 milligrams per liter. And that is based on this 3-hour and 6-hour pump test. By the way, myself, staff from Collards and numerous people taste the water. There's absolutely no salty taste, but that's just a side note. The fact is, it is, in fact, reasonably and easily treatable with today's technology. A reverse osmosis unit installed just at the kitchen sink, it's called point of use RO, will readily treat water needed for drinking and cooking, but city staff won't accept that. The D55 guidelines are almost 30 years old, and at the time, this technology wasn't available. Today, it is readily available, and I was quoted a cost of $1,700 installed. It is also easy to maintain by changing the filter annually. The reverse osmosis unit that I'm specifying here, it would reduce sodium and TDS by approximately 90%. So the new level for sodium would be approximately 21 or 22 milligrams per liter at the tap, which is an extremely low level. What I am basically asking for is that the Hydro G study be accepted with a condition on file that there is a aesthetic sodium exceedance and that a reverse osmosis unit would be installed at the kitchen sink to treat the drinking water. This would completely solve any concerns related to sodium. I believe that this is a very reasonable request and it would allow for the construction of 2 new homes, one lot that my wife and I plan to build on and the second one for our son. Also, the city often lists reverse osmosis at the drinking water tap on agreements to treat sodium. And I do have an example, if Sarah can pull that up. It's the one with the highlighted text. It's from a property on Ashton Station Road. You able to pull it? Well, that's the, okay, well, while we're there, that's, if you can see that, that's the TDS that's saying the TDS, it will reduce by 90%. So that's just a spec sheet on the reverse osmosis unit. And the next slide, it's right there. The owner covenants and agrees to install a properly sized softener that will remove elevated hardness and iron present in the water. Furthermore, a separate drinking water tap on the raw water that is not treated through a water softener shall be installed to reduce sodium intake. And in the alternative, the owner acknowledges and agrees that a reverse osmosis unit may be installed in a drinking water tap to remove sodium. And I absolutely acknowledge and agree to that. Also, I would like to note that a very similar case with a sodium exceedance was before the committee in 08. It was approved. Another was before the OMB in 2010, and it was also approved. And both were based on the fact that these were not health-related concerns and that treatment was in fact available. Thank you for your consideration. Also in attendance virtually is my engineer, Colleen Vermeer, who can answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from planning?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we had a discussion with the applicant last week regarding this, and unfortunately, staff would not be in support of a change of the condition, as the guidelines are from the Ministry of Health, and could potentially set a precedent for future hydro Gs coming from other applications. So that is our position.
Are we entitled to make an order that is not in line with the Ministry of Health guidelines?
I don't believe we are.
Panel members, any questions? Comments? Yes, Ms. Henderson. Yes.
Hi, I just have a question for planning staff. When home builders are going through a plan of subdivision process, if noise on the road exceeds the MOE guideline, air conditioners are required to be installed. Pretty standard, has been going on for years and years. So I'm just curious as to why you feel that an applicant who is identifying that he's agreeable to a condition that requires a reverse osmosis for severance, why the city would not be accepting that condition.
Planning, please.
The reasoning being that this hydro G was exceeding the minimum concentration considered reasonably treatable for sodium. If we have reports that the sodium concentration comes close to that level, then we recommend a reverse osmosis system. But because this is exceeding that, it's not considered reasonably treatable. So we could not accept it. And that's a provincial regulation, and it's not really up to us to say.
Any comments, panel members?
Just a question for the applicant. So this wasn't an issue before the Ontario Land Tribunal, or?
No, because the hydro G study was to be done as one of the conditions, right?
Okay.
For severance.
Okay. And you also indicated that your consultant is online? Or
Yes, and I've texted her because she gave me the thumbs up, so.
Hello?
Oh, there we go. Okay, maybe it's a voice call?
And maybe we could just get her name and qualifications.
Oh, yes, sorry, I thought I mentioned that. Her name is Colleen Vermeer, and she's an engineer with Collard Associates in Kemptville.
And maybe we can just hear from her what her thoughts are on this.
Hi. So after meeting with the city, I understand the city's position on this, because the maximum concentration considered reasonably treatable is something that the Ministry of the Environment set up in their D5 guidelines back in the 1990s. So, you know, technology has advanced a lot since then, but this is the standard that they set for development approval. And so they don't want the precedence of that being exceeded at the city level. But the water on this site is not unaesthetically pleasing. Like it's not, this is the only parameter that exceeds, it only exceeds by a small amount. Like if you look at the water holistically, the whole water, the quality of this water is good. I have seen properties where they have numerous aesthetic parameters that are exceeding, and the treatment for that it becomes very onerous. And time and a lot of maintenance and a lot of cost for systems that don't operate, you know, in their peak and need a lot of maintenance. This isn't one of those. So the hardness here is low, so there won't need to be a water softener. So like if you can have very salty water with high sodium and also high hardness, so then you have to soften to remove the hardness, but you still got this salt, and this salt can actually be exacerbated, the salt levels, by a softener. In this case, the hardness is so low that you don't need water softening at the site. So the impact from, say, the sub pump discharge from a water softener isn't going to happen here, which is, you know, a typical thing in a lot of properties that do have hardness, is you've got that waste line from the sump that's going into the sump drain. So you don't have that issue here, and the below the tap RO system is fairly standard now. The city often includes this in recommendations where they want, you know, the additional softness, the additional sodium removed after softening, or in strontium, which we have in the Ottawa area, naturally present in the rock. There are certain circumstances where the city recommends, where the typical Hydro-G reports would recommend softening, a hardness, an RO system under the tap. So the treatment we're seeking here is the same as what's often recommended by the city. The sodium exceedance is marginal, and there aren't a host of other problems with the water to contextualize treatment. So it's fairly straightforward, in my opinion, the treatment system.
Okay, and then just to confirm the exceedance, the requirement is, or the maximum requirement set out by the ministry is 200 milliliters per liter, and we're at 216. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the levels were between 216 and 219. And the maximum concentration considered reasonably treatable is 200.
Okay, thank you.
If the reverse osmosis unit is not installed, if this is approved and property is built and the reverse osmosis unit is not installed and people drink this water, is there a possible health risk?
So sodium has two levels. Okay, so sodium, the aesthetic, as in the water taste, can be unpalatable or undrinkable if the sodium, you know, they say this number 200 milligram per liter. So when you get numbers that are much higher than that, the taste of the water would be impacted and people will not want to drink it. So there's that limit. There is also a limit for sodium, which is 20 milligram per liter. And that is a health objective, but that applies to a targeted individual who has to have sodium restrictions in their diet. So it's only for certain health conditions where the 20 milligram per liter is pointed out. And it's one of the reasons we put sodium as a, you know, RO systems as a removal for water that has to be softened. So the general public can consume sodium at 200 milligrams per liter, but the health objective of 20 milligrams per liter is specifically for people who have to reduce sodium intake. So you get sodium from food as well as from water, right? But mainly your source of sodium is going to be from food intake.
Okay, any other questions?
May I add a couple of points, if I may?
Just a second.
Oh, sorry.
Just asking.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
planning, any comments, further comments? Okay, the applicant.
I'm sorry about the
No,
interruption.
that's all right.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not used to the setting, I
It's
guess.
okay.
Okay. Sodium is not considered, because I know when people hear sodium, they're like, oh my God, the water's dangerous or something. Again, this is aesthetic and not health related. Sodium is not, this is from, from D5 or other, from many sources. Sodium is not considered a toxic element. A maximum acceptable concentration for sodium in drinking water has therefore not been specified. So what they're specifying is they think at 200 parts per million or milligrams per liter that some people might be able to taste it, right? And that's kind of where they draw that line. But again, this is from 1996 when things weren't readily treatable. Back then, you probably have to put a very expensive whole house RO system in. It has a host of problems, hard to maintain. This is super easy to maintain. And quite honestly, I mean, I plan on living there and my son plans on living in the other one. Though I've pumped this well many times because we were working to get it the best we could. I worked my butt off for that. And I myself wouldn't even want to put it in our RO system because it tastes excellent. But if I would be happy to put that on title, that an RO system could be installed to reduce sodium. And that's, it warns people, gives them the heads up. And then like problem solved, and two new houses we build. I don't see how that isn't a solution to a very easy solution to a problem.
Okay, thank you very much. Shall we reserve or other? Yes. Thank you very much. We will let you know.
May I add one more thing? Just about the reserve, or if you want to reserve your decision. The severance, I supplied this on May 10th. It's well in advance of the 40 days. It's just like time is running out because it is a June 30th deadline.
Yes, we know that.
Yeah. So how long would it take for me before I know the decision?
What is it, 20 days? Staff?
It would be issued typically in the normal course, which would be 10 days.
10 days. So you know in 10 days.
I'll know in 10 days. Oh yeah, it's hard to.
Pardon?
Yeah, it's tough to wait another 10 days to find out, Would this would be considered a major change of condition?
Well, we're not sure whether it's major or minor change. I understand there are differences if it's major and minor.
Yes, because if it was a minor change, and basically the time would almost run out, right?
Yes, that's right. Major change. I think you're in for another 2 years.
Mm-hmm. And I would ask for that if you could consider that, please.
A major change?
Yes.
If we are of the mind. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank you very much, members of the committee.
So that completes our items.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.